is Andrew Fox, and you're listening to Seriously Loco.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC. I'm Phil Bakke, your host tonight. I'm joined by Mikka Burrell. Mikka, episode 2.
Episode 2, season 2. It's awesome. We're doing it on a Friday night, so I feel like we can just drink our beer and just, it's kind of more relaxed, you know? Like, there's nowhere to be tomorrow, so it's nice.
Yeah, this is definitely like a chill episode recording session. Not the chillest topics, I guess.
No, the topics are on 100, but we'll get there.
Just hot takes all over the shop. The podcast is brought to you. I don't want to neglect our sponsors, Roughneck Scarves, and a new sponsor this year, Icarus FC. You guys may have seen Icarus around Instagram or Twitter with just some absolute fire for kit concepts, and then they also do some pretty legit actual merch and kit designs. The one that they are kind of famous for now is the old an old Soviet team that used to play in the Chernobyl area.
Really?
Yeah, Stroitel Pripyat, and they did a pretty crazy design for them. It's pretty wild. You guys should check that out. But check out Icarus because they're just awesome. Anyways, big show tonight. Lots to talk about. But I mean, we are nearing the end of the off season. Mm-hmm. I guess we're out of the off season technically because Locomotive's training.
So they're in preseason.
They've played a preseason friendly.
Yeah. So
I mean, does it feel a little? I don't know. Do you feel weird about the fact that it's like already back? Because it feels like a long off season and a short off season kind of all at once.
No, yeah, I absolutely agree. Because when did the postseason end? November? I mean, well, yeah, because the holidays go so fast. I think that's what kind of contributes to it feeling fast, but at the same time, we're just ready to see Locomotive football again, so that makes it slow. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I guess it is just preseason now. Not that we can see any of these games, but it's the opening night is fast approaching. It's February tomorrow, so
yeah, we are in the preseason fully now, and I mean, we may as well jump right into it. Basically, Mikka, you dropped a big article on Seriously Loco, chronicling the Seb Velasquez transfer saga. I think as it's known, it's not really a transfer saga, but the contract saga, whatever. Mm-hmm. But you said we're kind of a real club now. In the last episode, that was the name of our episode, which I thought was fitting. We're in our second year, and we're having a little bit of off-season drama. Is it almost healthy?
Yeah, no, there's so many firsts. It's like our club is taking I don't know, there's just so many things that like we're used to supporting some of the bigger clubs that we support, right. You know, whether in Europe or wherever. And for our little club here in West Texas to be like going through these kind of things, which I call it a transfer saga in the article. It's just kind of wild. But I mean, yeah, I did write a piece, of course, with Phil and Christian's help, about the Seb Velasquez situation. I'm sure by the time that people are listening to this, it'll be free for everyone to read, but it's up for our patrons on Patreon right now. Big shout out to you guys who are supporting Seriously Loco and everything we do. Of course, everything that we raise through Patreon goes right back into the show. So we all really appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, everyone knows by now after Seb dropped his own statement that he will not be returning to the club. He is a free agent at the time that we're recording. And yeah, it seems like from what we were able to kind of glean from our sources and also from Velasquez's tweets that it wasn't the most pleasant, I guess, separation. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we're going to get into that tonight. I wish Christian was here because he had a whole rant prepared, but you guys, if you've read the article, you got a little taste of it. So
Christian was prepared to go full Stephen A. So we'll have to try to maybe live up to a little taste of what Christian was going to be offering. But I mean, in the piece, it's obviously you go in depth about kind of the ins and outs, and we kind of kept the receipts because you've got to show the proof of this. And I think what's offered by reading this article and what we'll hopefully offer tonight. I think tonight will be slightly more emotional than what the piece itself said, where ultimately, like, we focused on trying to get just the facts of this is what happened and these are kind of the impacts of that, rather than going fully, like, emotional about it.
Yeah, and I hope that I was fair in kind of telling that story. I mean, just a brief recap. Everyone who follows Seb Velasquez on Twitter or on Instagram knows that he was training or on trial. I don't know. We'll talk about that later. With Club Atlético Nacional in the Colombian First Division. So, I mean, clearly I assume he had to be out of contract by that point in order to be training with another club, because there'd be no way that you let your asset train with somebody else.
Right.
So, he was hoping to secure a place with Atletico. From everything that Velasquez said, that didn't happen because of an injury in early December, and also I guess Atletico brought in other players in his position. So again, he's still a free agent now. According to Seb, he did want to come back to El Paso, assuming it hadn't worked out in Colombia.
Right.
And basically he makes the statement that the club didn't really get back to him.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, let's just take the statement first. I mean, I kind of touch on this in the piece, but I'll try and go a little bit more in depth with it. Now, first and foremost, I do want to say that I commend him for putting it out there in a way, because he was trying to bring clarity and transparency to the situation, because so many people have been asking. We asked, we asked for our piece because we wanted to give him the opportunity to contribute if he wanted to, and so I absolutely respect that. But I think there were some problematic parts of the statement, in my opinion. I mean, again, I touch on this in the piece, the whole trial versus training thing. I mean, we had kind of asked him, half jokingly, half wanting to know, like, what are you doing at the club? And he said, relax, it's training.
Right. I'm just staying in shape. It's nothing serious. And that's what his words, relax, it's just training type thing. I had used the GIF. I didn't even say anything in the tweet. I used the GIF of, I can't remember his name, but the guy from The Big Lebowski, nervously laughing.
This is cool.
Yeah, exactly. Essentially like the live action version of the dog in the burning building. Like, this is fine.
Yeah.
But that distinction, he obviously knows the difference.
Yeah.
So his choice of words, I think, is very telling, because when he was speaking about the fact that he was training with Atletico and saying it's just training, he knows that he's implying that it's not a trial and a chance to win a contract.
Right. If it's just training, then it's not something else more than that. A trial would be, you have probably signed some kind of agreement with the club that you will exclusively be training with them for this period, because you might want to win a spot on the roster.
Yeah.
And then we come to this statement, and he says, I wasn't just training, I was on trial. So the only thing that I could think of that there might have been a mix-up is the timing, because I know we had asked him that in late December, and he apparently had already had his grade 1 hamstring injury at that point.
Right. So
I'll give him the benefit of the doubt in that aspect. But you're absolutely right. There's obviously a difference between those two words.
And he knows it. I think that's where because it's not necessarily like, if his tweet had said, hey, I'm just trying to stay in shape or something like that, but he specifically used the word training when he replied to us, and then he used the word trial in his statement to distinguish from the fact that he wasn't just training.
Right.
So, which I think what I want to preface, like, the reaction to all this. So what we also learned via his statement, not via the club, which is preferably how I would have liked to find out, but he in his statement he said they made a good contract offer December 18th, I think it says in the statement, or somewhere in December they offered him a deal to extend his stay in El Paso, and that's where I guess how I think about it is both sides somehow can be in the right, I guess, because Velasquez is well within his rights to pursue a contract wherever. He's a free agent.
Absolutely.
He doesn't have to accept a return to El Paso. El Paso, well within their rights to offer a contract, and then after a certain period of time rescind the offer due to the delay of, I mean, I don't know if you've ever used this feature on Football Manager, but where you delay, and then, hey, we don't, you can't delay anymore. You have to either take the deal or not. And that's kind of what happened, where it was like, January 18th is what I was thinking of, because he reached out, or the club reached out to him on January 18th about the contract offer. So conceivably the contract offer had been on the table for a month, at least 3 weeks. And he had said, like, basically, I'll get back to you. And then he said he tried to reach out to them after that and couldn't. They weren't returning his calls. I have to think that January 18th call, whether he saw it as this or not, must have been the, cutoff.
Yeah.
Of either that phone call was going to end in him, I'm going to sign the deal, or if it was no, then it was, okay, we're moving on to other targets.
And I have to think that was plenty of time, because January 18th was a week and a half ago.
Right.
The boys are in preseason now, Mark Lowry would like to have his roster sorted.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you're right. I think both parties are in the right in how they're trying to plan for the season.
Right.
But yeah, it sounds like it was a breakdown in communication. But I mean, again, I think it kind of goes with my other kind of thing that I found interesting, I guess you could say, about the statement, was that he said that he found out from, former teammates that he was off the team. Well, you can't be off the team if you're not on the team.
Right.
Right? I mean, at that point, you did not have a contract, as far as we can glean.
Yeah.
So, again, I think that professional athletes, and all of us really, but especially people who are in the public eye, they have a responsibility to be a little more discerning with the things that they say.
Sure.
And I think that Seb Velasquez is a very intelligent person, and he knows that. But, words matter, and that's just... I mean, it's not true. I don't think it's intentional at all.
Sure.
But the way that that's characterized, I think, is a little bit unfair.
Right.
I think.
Just a little disingenuous.
Yeah, a little bit disingenuous. I mean, you can't be off the team if you're not on it.
Right.
And
it is, in each of these things, it's one of those things where it feels like semantics, but it's more.
But it matters.
It's more than that.
Yeah.
It's not just semantics. It's the
narrative. It's the narrative that a given party is trying to build, for better, for worse. I really, again, I want to clarify that I don't think that there's any ill intent whatsoever in that statement. I want to repeat, we asked him for a take.
Right.
And he gave that to us, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
I do respect that. And I know a lot of fans that responded to him and were happy to hear from him, and that's great. But yeah, there were just a couple of things in there that I thought were a little weird.
Well, and it does seem like, and I mean, it feels like, and I think it's a natural step in his progression now, is he had to kind of, for his own sake, he had to kind of publicly break with Locomotive in order to allow himself the kind of space to sign with someone else. Because if it was dead silence after the way the offseason has gone and the amount of retweets and the amount of times that he talked to fans and talked about coming back, if he signs for someone else domestically, and I don't think even MLS, like if he comes back to USL, he had to give himself the space to have that break in between. Because if all of a sudden he signed for Miami or these other teams that have been like rumored in and around, if he did that without making a statement, then it feels like he was engineering it.
Right.
So I think from his perspective, he had to make some kind of statement saying like, this is, from my perspective, like why it didn't work out with El Paso, because otherwise it's just like, oh, he was just angling for wherever the most money was or whatever. So I think the statement is designed to say, if I was coming back to the States, then I wanted to come back to El Paso. Mm-hmm. But I think it's important that when he said, I think it's also important to distinguish, and again, like acknowledging that Seb is a smart guy and there is meaning behind the words. Mm-hmm. When we have to understand too that when he says I wanted to come back, that was conditional. He wanted to come back as long as he wasn't offered a contract in Colombia, which for all kinds of reasons is fine. Yep. But you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't go trial with other teams and then hope, and leave Locomotive on the hook until the beginning of preseason. Right. Like, a lot of these players, in speaking with people around the club, a lot of the players who have joined this offseason have been secured contract-wise, like, since the end of last season. So, right. Like, despite the fact that they're announcing them now, guys like Zola and Facobo, and like they've been locked up for months.
Yeah, and that's the way that any well-run club does their business. I mean, some of the biggest clubs in the world, they plan for their summers last summer. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, yeah, again, we're talking about January 18th. That was a week and a half ago. Yeah. I think that he was probably given plenty of time. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, Phil. And one thing about this saga, if you will, that I think has been really interesting is kind of the role of social media in it. Yeah. Because Seb Velasquez was by far the most active on social media of the players in Locomotive's inaugural squad. Mm-hmm. And it very much is a double-edged sword, because the thing with social media, for better or for worse, it's a crazy phenomenon, but it does make people feel connected to celebrities and athletes, because you've got that instant access to them. This was not something that existed 10, 20 years ago, in this way. Yeah. And
no one's like DMing Thierry Henry
about exactly
his move to Barca. Like.
Exactly. And if we could, I would have said so, but yeah. And not only that, but not only is he available to be talked to, he also responds. Right. He replies, he retweets, like he did this throughout the saga. And I've spoken with, some fans, and by all means, these fans don't represent what everyone feels, but of the fans that I've spoken to, they do feel like they were a little bit strung along. Right. I mean, some of the messages are pretty cheeky. I mean, look at the one that we got. Have faith. Yeah. Wink emoji. Right. It's like,
and that was to me like making a joke. Yeah. Like, that wasn't me fishing for a reply. Sure. Or whatever. That was just.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, Velasquez is well within his rights to joke around on the internet. Like, that's cool. But some people take this very seriously. And that's why I say it's kind of like a double-edged sword, because it's meant to be fun and casual, but really you are talking to real people with real emotions and connections to the club. And
Absolutely. So, I mean, my kind of last reaction from kind of just a, well, I want to get, like, so we have reactions to these different things, but your reaction to him not coming back from either, like, you can go emotional or from a sporting perspective, like, how do you feel about this, the fact that Velasquez isn't returning?
Yeah, from a sporting perspective, I'm disappointed, obviously, because he's supremely talented, especially at this level. He's got that talismanic vibe about him, that leadership vibe, the leader on the pitch.
Right.
He's flashy in the right ways. Yeah. Exciting to watch. He delivered in the big moments for us in the playoffs.
Right.
We are losing a big player.
Yeah.
We have lost a big player, I should say.
Right.
And he's exactly right that his talents are absolutely going to be appreciated somewhere else, for sure. Yeah, and I mean, numbers-wise, too, he contributed with the goals and assists. He's a unique player, I think, and it's probably one that's not so easily replaceable. So, yeah, in that sense, I wonder how Mark Lowry might set up his side if we're going to kind of begin to move away from having that player in the hole, that number 10.
Right.
Just because from what I can see from the squad right now, there's no one, like, super obvious for that role, except perhaps Bassetti.
Right.
So, yeah, from a sporting perspective, it's a big loss, and it's disappointing, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how we kind of cope with that, or if we do make one more signing like we have kind of been hearing. So
right. It is, and I think that's kind of what the reaction should be, I guess. We have to accept at some level that this is a business, but it does involve humans. And I mean, we do have to also accept from Seb's perspective, he's, the angling of the move, or angling towards a move to Colombia, was not 100% for, soccer reasons, or football reasons. He wanted to be close to his family as well as his mom. And so I can respect that for sure.
Absolutely.
But yeah, from a different perspective, I get Locomotive's position as well of saying, we can't wait around forever. We have a roster to build. And so I think, unfortunately, I have to take that, like, middle ground of just being like, I'm mainly disappointed in, and I spoke about it in my small, my small contribution to your piece. It just feels like there was so much that could have happened, and he could have built even in a year and a half. Like, if he just did one more full season, and then he moved on to wherever. Because he is, it's worth noting that Seb is not, like, young from a soccer perspective. He's 28. Like,
he's in his prime.
Right. He's right now, like, this is as good, he's probably about as good as he can be. And physically, he's going to start to, like, he's getting up towards his 30s, and for attacking midfielders, that's, the twilight years. That's not really, not to say he won't be able to contribute somewhere, but the bottom line is that I think he felt the pressure of, okay, I'm coming towards kind of like it's now or never, as far as a move to Colombia, but it will always feel like there's kind of an unwritten chapter and unfinished business back here because of how well he played and the connections to the community and all of that. So to see it end in the manner that it did is just disappointing. Not in the sense that I think that Locomotive should have waited, or that he should have not pursued what he wanted to do, which is play for Nacional. Like, I think both of those things are valid, but it is disappointing that we enter this second season without, as you said, like a talismanic figure, like a guy who became kind of the face of the club towards the end of last season. And so it is, there are all these kind of iconic images that that kind of stick with, even for a guy who was only here for 6 months. So it's it'll just always be a little hollow and like feeling because of the amount of potential and kind of promise that a full season with Sebastian kind of like hinted at. But we'll kind of never know. So it's just one of those weird kind of feelings where you're just, you might think about what could have been, but we're looking ahead now to what is, the players that are here, and so we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the club, we reach out. So just as we reached out to Seb for comment, we reached out to the club for comment as well. The club declined to comment for the article. And we spoke a little bit just like off, at the time about how we found it kind of strange that they didn't want to get out ahead of things. But do you think that they almost are in a position where they're like, anything we add to this, because of how active the player is on social media, anything we add to this will just kind of like poison the conversation, or like fuel the flames when they could just kind of let it go, and without comment it doesn't really cause any further drama, I guess. Yeah, no,
I don't envy the position that the club was in terms of what you just said about how he is so active on social media, and I think whatever they would have said would have been received poorly, unfortunately, just because he's so popular.
Right.
Because the only thing that I could think that they might have said is, we've announced that Sebastian Velasquez's contract has expired. We wish him the best of luck in the future. Something like that. Yeah. But that's such a hard statement to make, because you're admitting that you haven't signed him and no one else has either.
Right.
Whereas with Jerome Kiesewetter, for example, he leaves and he directly moves up to MLS.
Right.
And I mean, it goes without saying that he's not as active on social media, so his departure was not as controversial, if you will, or noteworthy. Yep. But as far as the Velasquez situation is concerned, we were a little bit surprised that they didn't react or try to get ahead of it. But in thinking about it, it's like, what really could you have said?
Right.
So I do understand that from the club.
The conversations that have been had off the record with people from the club, it kind of echoed just basically what I was talking about with before, where it was, we can't wait around forever, and they did say, all of the things about Seb are obviously, no one is doubting any of his quality as a footballer. He's ridiculous. He's so good for this level. But it did become a bit of a distraction, and I think in terms of building a roster, when Mark is looking to put together a team and play a certain style, he knows, especially given last year, with how at the beginning of the season we were not a complete team. We had a lot of players, but from a quality perspective, we were not the finished product. Like, we had to add Jerome, we had to add Seb to become what we were by the end of the season.
Right.
We spoke in the last episode, like, wanting to not go through that again, not having to add mid-season to be competitive. And so, I mean, how much of this too, it feels like they didn't want to get bogged down in this because they have a plan for how to build this roster and make it the finished product on day one, rather than, in mid-season.
I give credit to the club, and I do touch on this in my piece, that they've managed to continue on with their transfers throughout waiting to see what would happen with Sebastian Velasquez. I think if there's anyone of this crop that's kind of like the statement signing, it might be Marios Lomis.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, again, we can trust Mark when he tells us what he's looking for, he goes and gets it. He said, I want a proven goal scorer, and he got one.
Right.
So, yeah. The way ahead, I think that if we can add one more piece, someone who's kind of an obvious creator maybe, then we'll be in good shape. But I think that as long as we have a good preseason, which we'll touch on because I think we have had a good one so far, we'll be all right. I mean, one player's not making or breaking this club, as we've always said. Yeah. And, I mean, I wish Seb the best of luck. I wonder where he ends up. I say Miami. Yeah. But we'll see.
I hope Miami. Yeah. But let's say, for the sake of argument, Seb signs somewhere in the West. And he will come back to the SWUP as an opposition player.
Yeah, he'll Airbnb his own house.
The reception. How do you think the reception would be?
From fans who have been following this, not good.
Yeah.
Not good.
Yeah.
And again, I think I might have mentioned this on the last pod, and some might disagree, but I would just have to think that a move like that, where you're staying in the conference, is money. Yeah. Because, which is fair enough, you know? We all need to make a living. Like, a lot of us have quit jobs because we want to be paid more. I mean, that's really the only way to get paid more is to quit your job and go somewhere else, because getting a raise is, like, ridiculous. So that's fair enough, but I would have to assume that would have been the case because what else is it? I mean, again, it can't be sporting ambition because unless you're really fiending to go back to Utah.
Right.
But
which I think based on the fact, and some things that Seb said in interviews ahead of the game against Monarchs in the Western Conference Final, like there's not a relationship there.
Okay. Well, and like, so
once he didn't get a MLS contract offer, he was pretty much, that's when he went to Korea and was like, I'm done with. It was. Because I was kind of expecting the, like, hey, you're going back to, the team that you've played for and all this. And he was like, yeah, I hope we, like, destroy them, basically. So,
it can't be a sporting thing then. So unless you want to go to the East, which, again, fine.
And that's it, I mean, I think the ideal situation is he does, if he went to Miami and then the earliest that Locomotive sees him is in the final, then I'm down with that, because that would be fine with me. But as you spoke about it, we are into the preseason. We're into we're about a player or two maybe shy of the final roster. Mark has said that he's carrying a small roster into the season, but they played their first preseason match. Texas United, a kind of local amateur team from Central Texas, but 7-0 Locomotive, the runaway winners. I mean, it's preseason, it's amateur opposition, but I think they played this team the first preseason game of last year, and I think it was 2-0. So any like heart taken from, even though it is probably expected that we would demolish a team like that, do you think it's important that they did?
Yeah, I mean, because if you can get that many goals at this point, I think it just builds your confidence, because that's the thing that we struggled with so much last season, is scoring goals. And everyone listening to this podcast knows that's what you kind of do in soccer. But also to see who scored was very interesting. Yeah. Zola gets his first. Right. Congratulations to Distel. Yeah. Choppa with a brace. Yeah. Goal from a right back. Yeah. And then, of course, our TBAs and our trialists.
Well, I want to speak about. We'll talk about Zola first. So Zola, obviously, you being the Francophile that you are, big fan of Distel's coming in and got him the congratulations tweet in French from Seriously Loco. So credit to you for that one. But Distel scoring the first goal of the preseason. Does it kind of hint at? I think we've gotten some of this out of Mark, whether on or off the record. But Distel primarily playing in a more defensive role in France. It seems like Mark, and maybe this goal kind of speaks to that. It seems like Mark sees him as a much more advanced player for Locomotive.
Yeah, I think he's going to be more of an 8, more of an attacking 8, more of a roaming kind of player.
Yeah.
If you watch his highlights, he's plenty mobile.
Yeah.
So I know he is. I think he's 30 years old. Is that correct?
He is 30.
Yeah. So, but
doesn't look it.
No, not at all. Yeah. So I mean, if we can, that's the thing that I think was missing a lot last year too. Is not only the goals themselves, but goals from midfield. So if he can do that for us, that'll be great. I do love that the first goal of this preseason and this season is from a new player, because it is a new chapter in Locomotive's story, and I'm really excited to see more of that. Goals from midfield, I think, is going to be really, really important. Another thing too about using more of the midfield for the attack is we did lose a playmaker in James Kiffey.
Right.
So I wonder too if the idea is to try and create from the middle and less from the flanks because of that. It's great.
I speaking to someone yesterday about the match. We weren't able to be there, unfortunately. But the one thing that was pointed out to me from someone who was at the match was the fact that, it's kind of men against boys because it's professionals against amateurs, and most of them are college players, for Texas United. But they said in particular, Distel and Fabrice Facobo, it looked like the gap was so obvious in quality between them and their opposition. It literally looked like men versus boys, which soccer has a way of at times you can emphasize the quality, but there are a lot of times where you play a game and it's not so obvious. It's not, because if that was the case, then the good teams would go out and smash every other team. 5-0, 8-0, whatever, in every game. But so often you're able to frustrate players that are better than you and stuff. Well, in this case, someone watching the game was just it was like watching, literally just men against boys, where they couldn't cope with it. And the quality of guys like that, Zola coming, having played basically his whole career in trying to win promotion to Liga 1, but coming from Monaco, and then Fabrice coming from Sporting's academy, and kind of playing every day for a spot to try to prove, to the Sporting hierarchy that he belonged. It's always good to see when there is that gap in quality. We really did emphasize it in this game, and the scoreline reflects that. But as you mentioned, the Chapa brace, it's kind of another, maybe an evolution of Chapa's role in the team. Do you think maybe he goes a little more Nick Ross and a little less Yuma in his approach?
Yeah, the thing that Chapa did really well last season was just, kind of like the water carrying position where you're really just trying to control midfield and, put in that hard graft.
Right.
But when he would get on the ball, he'd be pretty decent. So I wonder, if the idea is to harness that a little bit more.
Right.
We have a lot of midfielders, so I do worry a little bit about Chapa's play time, because I think Distel and Fabrice Kobo and Yuma, Richie, Nick. Nick can play wide, so maybe that's an option.
Sure.
I still do think that he might be a little bit down the pecking order a little bit, but
Yeah.
But yeah, if we can again, if we can get more going from midfield, having lost some of the playmaking from the wings, it'll be a good thing for us.
Brian on the score sheet, and when we interviewed Mark at the end of last season, he was pandering to the host, but he talked about the use he talked about the use of fullbacks both by Pep and Jurgen Klopp and how he admired how they were able to utilize them in the attack and all that. So despite the fact that James Kiffey, obviously one of our most creative players last year, we know that Andrew Fox's has got a good pass on him for sure. When he was playing in center back, he was kind of like playing that long kind of diagonal ball over the top from that left center back position. Brian getting on the score sheet, do you think it is not necessarily that we would emphasize down the flanks as much, but do you think it's just an indication that like he is going to look to get the fullbacks involved and play them high up and use the positioning of Chiro and then like just the sheer like athleticism of Mishak to like cover for getting the fullbacks forward? Yeah,
I think we'd be remiss not to let Brian have that freedom because he's so effective in every part of the pitch. Did he score for us last season?
Yeah,
maybe one or two.
He had 2 goals towards the end of the season.
Yeah.
One away at Reno, I want to say, at the end of the season. And then there was one more. Both away from home, I think.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And it was like 2 games in a row. And
yes.
It was
now
like
I remember.
lightning in a bottle.
And he was getting like destroyed physically every game, too.
Yeah. Like fouled like 40 times a game.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think we'd be foolish not to let him have that kind of freedom to go forward. But I don't know if with the personnel we have, or perhaps at the level that we're playing at, if we can have both fullbacks kind of like bombing on. Unless, of course, we're going to play 4-3-3 and have, that midfielder who can cover a fullback space, a la Liverpool or City or any of those sides that kind of do that. Probably City more than Liverpool I think about it.
It's like the Wijnaldum role.
Sure, yeah.
Just you occupy that space.
Right.
It's one of those. It could certainly be the approach. I think based on what I saw of Fox before he joined Locomotive, I do think he can be that
attacking.
I'm not saying he's like gonna have whatever 8 assists or 10 assists or whatever Kiffey had, but I think based on what he did in his time in Sweden and then at Grimsby and all that, like he definitely gets up and down the wing and can whip a cross in. So with Lomas in there, it could be. Which I thought it was interesting. 7-0 Lomas not on the score sheet. So
did he play? Do we know if he played?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I didn't confirm.
Yeah.
It's possible that he didn't. But it was one of those moments where I was, we sign a guy who we know can score goals. So to see him, not on the score sheet in a lopsided game, it's a little bit strange.
Yeah, a little bit.
But we did have a player on the score sheet who we don't know who it is. Well, we had multiple players on the score sheet who we don't know who they are. But in particular, player to be announced. I tried to trick Andrew Forrest into telling me who it was by saying, "Hey, so it was like Distel, Chapa, and then who got the third goal?" He didn't fall for it.
Damn.
I tried really hard. He stopped for a second and then stopped himself, but
Come on, Andrew.
I tried to trick him into it. He didn't fall for it. But But player to be announced based on a couple of conversations and based on what we heard from Mark at that press conference, the preseason press conference they had. At that time, he said they had 2 players that they were almost the deals were almost done, and one of those was Saeed Robinson. So we know that, and he said they were both attackers. The speculation that started now is, who is TBA? Is it someone that we know? Is it someone that that's new to the league? Is it someone that's in the Mountain Star setup?
Top-notch management.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, we saw Aron Gomez. I think the cat's out of the bag a little bit on that one. He was in a couple of the pictures from the friendly, but based on that preseason press conference, Mark said that they were hoping to kind of work something out, and they had a good relationship with Bravos and all this stuff, but he didn't relate it to the fact that they had this announcement. He said they had 2 more players to announce. He didn't make any indication that they were about to announce Aron. So I'm thinking it seems like Aron is back, but is player TBA a different person?
Yeah, because they've been kind of sloppy with the pictures.
Yeah.
So I'm almost inclined to think that TBA is someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I almost hope that it is, because if they do the like I said, if they do the hashtag a new signing, people are gonna get pissed.
Yeah. No, if they go Abu Dhabi on it, Wenger could only fall back on that so many times before people called him out.
Which, by the way, I would be very pleased if and we think he is back, because Gomez scored a lot of goals for us at the end of the season. So
yeah, we had
just another option.
I kind of had that thought of, if you extrapolate Aron Gomez's goal scoring record from the end of last season over a whole campaign, he's one of the top scorers in USL. So
yeah, the goals per minute is probably insane.
Yeah, because he played essentially a third of the season due to injury, and he came back from injury, and then Jerome Kiesewetter had been scoring every single game. So when he came back initially, he didn't play, and it was only when Jerome had his injury that he came in, and he almost immediately started scoring goals as well.
Right.
Where we thought, I always think it's funny because we thought when he came on, he got a yellow card almost immediately in his first appearance as a sub.
When then we thought oh, this dude's a bastard. He has no skill, but he'll just destroy people.
We got a goon. We got our shit house. And,
yeah.
But then he went and scored a bunch of goals later.
Who is like that in world football? Who's violent and productive? Luis Suarez, I guess.
Although I guess he's kind of, I don't know, a lot of the violence, I guess, has gone out of his game now. He's
his wife
matured.
Was again?
Yeah. I'm not moving again, because you bit someone. But no, so Aron Gomez, it seems like he's back. There's been some indications from the club that he's back. He's obviously training with the team, or he's on trial. I don't know. What do you think? Trial or training for?
Oh my God, this is gonna be a meme, isn't it?
Trial.
Did you trial or did you train? Or did you train then trial?
Train. Yep. So yeah, Aron Gomez, I think is back. Based on a couple of conversations around the team, I do think there's another player that they're waiting to announce.
Do we want to speculate?
I'm not sure. I have reason to believe from one off-the-record conversation that it is a 10.
Okay. Well, and that's...
But I don't know...
That's kind of what I hinted at in my piece.
Exactly. Because that is kind of the missing piece. If it is the one area where it's there's not a clear... Bassetti can definitely be that guy. Like, he can play in the hole, but I'd almost rather have Bassetti as part of, like, a front two with Lomas if he's going to play centrally, rather than, like, oh, you're the playmaker, because the way we saw Seb do it last year, like, he's dribbling from deep, he's doing, like, a lot of breaking the lines, like, via the dribble, and Bassetti is obviously a very technically gifted player, but not really like that. Like, I don't think he's going to beat many people, like, one-on-one, because he's just not really that type of player. Like, he'll make the smart runs, and he can deliver a hell of a ball.
Which is why I think he probably has a future on the left, if anything.
Right, and that's it. Yeah, if he can, whether it's cutting inside and shooting, or playing passes like
square passes.
Yeah. I think that's certainly almost like a kind of like a Coutinho.
Yeah.
Where he's not, like, he's got some tricks and stuff, but he's not gonna, like, just beat you for pace, like, down that side. But technically, he'll make
space for himself.
Right.
Yeah.
He's able to create, like, in other ways. But yeah, so the 10 I think is on the way. But I have no idea who it is. I have no idea, like, where he comes from or anything like that. But the team, the person I spoke to was like, there is a plan. I know it doesn't, like, always seem that way because because we don't see it. He's like, there is a plan, and there's a reason that we haven't announced it. And so I think it's more about like with player TBA, because I thought, like, I even spoke that night, like I did that live stream or whatever, and I was like, for our Patreon supporters, I was like, what better way to do, like, a player announcement than, like, release video of the goal and then do, like, a little video at post game and be like, this is our new player. He's already scored for us, and he hasn't even been announced yet.
Oh my God. Yeah, that would have been lit. And also you would have completely, like, Christian kind of, like, added the club about this, but, like, you would have been able to just completely, like, make Velasquez's statement irrelevant.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But okay, I guess I'll have to just accept that they're not yet ready to announce for some good reason.
Yeah.
But.
And I think a lot of times, like, we do poke the club for stuff like that, because it is I don't know, like we spoke in the last episode about, I mean, we had announced most of the players, but then I think Saeed is the only one who's been announced in the meantime. Which, I mean, speaking about Saeed Robinson, like, coming from switchbacks, I didn't put it in the outline, but, like, left-sided attacker was a gap, and it seems like, we kind of just, like, went out and got a guy who does that.
So, is he left-footed?
I think so.
Okay, because even better, because if he's a left midfielder, and if he is left-footed, then I can only assume that's kind of like the idea is to have him make from there.
Right.
Because we are trying to replace Kiffy's output on that flank.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the signing. He knows the league, so that's great. I mean, I do like that we tend to buy a lot of guys from overseas, because that's just, like, exciting and novel.
Right.
But it's nice to get someone who has experience in this league as well, and it seems to have played in a lot of different positions. So that could definitely be a good thing for us in terms of depth. And there's going to be injuries, so.
Right.
But yeah, he had, I think, 14 goals, 3 assists for the club, so not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad over his career there.
Right.
I'm looking now at his stats, and most of his goals are right-footed shots, so I'm wondering.
Okay, maybe he is right-footed then.
So maybe he's just going to, like, cut in, or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, well, Andy can play on the right then, too, so just versatility, which I guess is kind of the theme of a lot of Locomotive signings, is they've signed a lot of people who can do a lot of different things. Lomas is almost like the only signing they've made who you know exactly where he's going to play. He's a center forward.
Yeah.
Everybody
out
else,
and out.
everybody else can do a bunch of stuff. Like, Zola is going to play somewhere in midfield, but he can be a 6, he can be an 8. Fakobo, they spoke specifically about the fact that he can play center back as like a big feature of him, and adding depth at center back while still adding a depth at midfield and adding a quality midfielder. So there's not like the crisis of last year of, there were times last year with the injuries that we had where we couldn't play the way that Mark wanted to because we didn't have the personnel.
Right.
And now I think we've kind of built in enough of flexibility where even if there is an injury or a couple injuries, you don't have to like compromise the system you want to play.
Right. You don't have to be like, well, we don't have this guy. Let's like lob it. Or, dirty long ball now.
Yeah, and like changing the formation or whatever. It's like, I think with the players we have now, we can kind of play, if he's got a system where he wants to play a diamond or he wants to play a 4-3-3 or whatever, we've kind of got the personnel now who can do those things. And the one thing that isn't really there is the 10. And so if player TBA is a 10, then we've kind of got all our bases covered.
Yeah, and speaking of the 10, looking at Saeed Robinson's stats, he scored 5 goals from attacking midfield. So maybe he can be an option there as well. I think primarily he plays his trade on the left, but again, if an injury happens or something like that where we need to kind of shift him, then that's good. It's good that he can provide from there.
Right. The last, I'm not sure if it's one player or 2 players because a trialist scored the last 2 goals. But one player who was confirmed to be on trial with Locomotive and then almost immediately joined a different club. Shout out to Ricardo Zacarias. So he got spotted by Las Cruces Locos, which I always do love a supporters group in New Mexico for
you love to see it.
Yeah. So they spotted on Instagram Ricardo Zacarias, who's a New Mexico native but was trialing with Locomotive. I guess his trial ended and the pipeline to Chattanooga Red Wolves in League One kind of stayed open. Daniel Navarro spent last year on loan with them, or a part of the season on loan with them, and now I guess, I don't know, maybe a Red Wolves scout, or maybe we let Red Wolves know about, hey, we're not going to sign him, but because I'm thinking, like, if he was on trial with us, but he signed for Red Wolves literally, like, without going to Chattanooga, someone either watched him play here, or someone on our staff, like, let them know, hey, he's available, or whatever. Like, we're not going to offer him a contract, but he's, like, good, or whatever, good enough for League One. He's played in Liga MX as well, so.
Yeah, and I believe he came through that Path to Pro soccer combine type thing. Yeah. Which is great. Yeah. But I was just searching around for this kid, and I came across his Twitter, and his Twitter is, like, angsty AF. He said, and this is not like cringy tweets from like a while ago. This is like this summer. He says, people I haven't talked to in years all of a sudden start messaging me, #NoFakeFriends. Like, that's real. That's real. I feel that. No, but
taking that energy into 2020.
Big Loco energy. Yeah. No, but yeah, I guess he was with us until he wasn't. Best of luck to him in Chattanooga. Yeah. But maybe something to keep an eye on, someone to keep an eye on, because who knows, maybe it could be an option.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always funny to, it was funny in that particular instance to have a player basically like, hey, this is trialist. And the second, it felt like immediately after they were like, hey, this is him,
he signed
for Chattanooga, like almost instantaneously. So it was kind of impressive, the speed at which like our speculation can get unraveled.
But shout out to Las Cruces Locos though for spotting that, because I think it was from an Instagram story, right? Yeah. So.
No, that was some good detective work. Like solid insta creeping that got the job done. I'm assuming someone in Las Cruces must know Ricardo from
sure,
somehow.
Yeah, because he's a native.
Yeah. But yeah. So 7-0. Good way to start off the preseason. A lot of friendlies coming up against championship and one MLS team. Phoenix lost 3-0 to FC Cincinnati in a preseason game just now. So we have a game against FC Cincinnati.
Damn, and I was talking hella shit in our chat. Like, oh, they're like the worst MLS team. I hope that Richie can get one on them. Yeah. 'Cause that would be awesome. I would love there to be, I'd love Richie to have the chance. I'd love to play them in the Open Cup if we made it that far, and have him, in a competitive match, get a shot at FC Cincinnati. Plus, I assume they don't, they're not very good. From an MLS standpoint, they're horrible. So yeah. I would hope that maybe they, take the Open Cup to try to rest their main players, so they could be even worse than they normally are in the Open Cup. But we'll talk Open Cup here in a little bit. We do have some Open Cup talk, but off to a good start in the preseason. Friendlies being closed door. What's your thought about this kind of secretive approach to the offseason that Locomotive's kind of made their own in these first 2 seasons? Yeah. I feel like there's actually not this big conspiracy of them not wanting the fans there. I feel like they just don't want to, because for games and stuff, normal regular season games, the city and the police department and everyone really plan for these big amounts of people. Right. So I think they just don't want to do that. Yeah. At this point, I don't think there's anything about not wanting the fans there. I think logistically they're just nah. Yeah. So. Yeah. But yeah, it would be nice to be able to go and just check it out. But knowing how well supported we are, probably everyone would show out, and they're just we just no. Yeah. We don't want to do that yet. So.
I'm sure it's it's primarily probably the security side of things more than and a facility thing. Having to have the field ready and all that stuff when you can just play at the training facility and just not have bleachers or anything like that. Yeah, I think it's something boring like that, just logistics. Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where you see the teams that host preseason stuff own a soccer facility. Phoenix has a tournament because they have a stadium. San Antonio has a bunch of friendlies in San Antonio because they own their stadium, and it's already ready for purpose. Whereas I think there are, as much as we don't give a shit about the Chihuahuas, from a I don't care if your outfield is messed up or whatever. But I think from Mountain Star as well, I'm sure there's kind of the considerations for the Chihuahuas as well.
Oh yeah.
So
they're roomies.
Yeah. So until we have, and I would hope that maybe, in the when and if Locomotive have their own stadium, I'm sure that there will be maybe more opportunities to do preseason friendlies that move the needle for the club, where doing off-season or preseason friendlies against MLS teams or foreign teams. The Bravos one, I really think, I'm not really sure why that has to be closed door, because they play it down
at their stadium.
Juarez, and so I don't know why that has to be. You could make an event of that, but maybe someday there will be a kind of a
Again, I want my European friendly.
Right.
Like, that would just be sick.
Get Locomotive Moscow. Like that is the friendly that I want. Trains on trains.
Trains on trains. Trainception. Oh my god. Or like Cluj.
Yeah, exactly. Anyone with train motifs can get it for sure. But yeah. We did. I think we should probably head to our listener questions now.
Okay.
We have a couple. Not as many as last time when we neglected. I just completely skipped it.
Yeah, we're still trying to find our form.
Yep. All right. So let's see. So we spoke about this a little bit, but Fernie at LL Cool Fernie on Twitter. Do you think our attack can improve from last year, or do you think it will regress? Valid question given the fact that Kiesewetter and Velasquez are 100%, out. So, what do you think? We brought in some pieces, but are we moving forward from those departures?
Yeah, in terms of can we improve? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, we do have to acknowledge that 15 to 20 goals has left the club.
Right.
In the offseason.
Pending the Gomez
yes.
Return, I guess.
But I do think that what will be key to us scoring more goals is, one, Lomi settling in and staying healthy, and two, Bossetti finally being fit. Because I really don't think that we got to see all that he could offer.
No.
When he joined at the, I guess in the middle or towards the end of last season. So yeah, I do think that the attacking potential is there. I think Mark Lowry's just going to have to, I guess, ask for more ruthlessness from his players.
Right.
But yeah, no, I think we can improve. I don't think we're ever going to be a team that scores at will like a Phoenix.
Sure.
Or a team like that, but yeah, no, I don't see any reason why we can't improve, and we certainly, again, you can see what the intent is with some of these signings, especially Lomi's.
Right. Yeah, and I think that is, you said it with ruthlessness. I think it ultimately, last season we found ways to not score. From very good positions. So I think, as you said, the intent behind a lot of who we've brought in is based around finding those guys with the killer instinct. And then I think the wild card, and I mean, I know since he's literally been around the club since the first minute, and he had kind of let's just say it, an underwhelming season. But Omar is kind of a wild card in that he gets in such good positions and he does so many good things, but his end product, for whatever reason, is just not there. And if he can convert a couple, or if he can put in a few more good crosses, or put a couple more shots on target, you're literally talking about a guy who could be in double digits of assists and goals.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, it's easier said than done, but the type of positions that he gets in, he should be that type of dude.
You know who Omar reminds me of? He reminds me of Middlesbrough's Adama Traore.
Yes,
and
exactly.
We need him to be Wolves Adama Traore. Because he's got the pace, the strength, the dribbling.
Yeah.
If you have the finishing, this is a hell of a player.
Right.
Like Adama Traore is right now.
Right. Literally being spoken about at the top level of
after coming from La Masia, and it does actually have a lot of parallels to Omar's story, coming as the first overall pick in the MLS draft. But yeah, he is our Adama. We just need someone to unlock that that goal scoring like Traore has done this season. Yeah. But he's absolutely the wild card.
Yeah. Because I think it's crazy to say, because we have brought in pieces, and Lomas, I think, is the guy that we look to in terms of, okay, he started last season. Before he got hurt last season, he was literally on. He was unstoppable in the first 7 games for North Carolina. So he has that ability, and it's just a matter of will he have the luck with the injury, because it wasn't like a. And the club spoke about this too. Like, his injury was not one of, he's injury prone. It was one of like just he got a knock that became like a serious injury. Like, it was a collision. It wasn't like, he turned and his knee exploded or something like that.
Right.
So it is interesting. It will be interesting to see how Lomas settles in. I think Lomas will benefit a little bit from being in the West, because I think, and this has been talked about a little bit, the East is very defensive, or more so. Like, a lot of the teams in the East are not scoring tons of goals. It's very focused on like not conceding, whereas the West is like literally the Wild West. Like,
legit literal shootouts.
Yeah, there's just like these random score lines where all of a sudden there is something where a decent team in Austin Bold is getting just 6 put on them by Phoenix, or we're hanging 4 on Timbers, or 3 against Vegas. Like, it can get wild. And there's just with a few exceptions, you don't really see kind of stuff like that. So I think Lomas will benefit a little bit, because I think he could probably, some of these defenses in the West, like, I think he could probably bully a little bit.
Oh yeah, I mean, and he looks like a unit too. Yeah. So I'm interested to see how we can utilize him on our set pieces, because I remember last year we would just like roll our eyes at like dead ball situations.
Getting a corner was actively negative.
Yeah,
like it wasn't even like, maybe we can do something.
It's like R1 call for player, like
take it short. Don't put it in the box, because it'll be like an automatic counter attack.
That's a good question though.
No, that was good. There's so much to talk. It's crazy, like especially with it being preseason. There's so much like on the horizon. So there's so much that you could potentially talk about. Patrick Ariola, he said, if we, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but if we beat Detroit City in cup play, would that be considered an upset?
Probably.
Do you think so?
Well, from what I understand, and Phil, I'll absolutely let you take more of this question, but from what I understand, this is a very talented team, very well supported.
Yes.
But they are in, is it?
Well, they're starting.
NISA?
Yeah, they're starting in NISA, I guess.
NISA.
Or whatever. They're starting that this season, but it is their first professional season.
Okay. But they're like serial winners though, right? At the levels that they've been at, they have a couple trophies.
They started winning this year, or this past year in NPSL. They like became, because they were in a period of like always the bridesmaid sort of thing. They were super well supported since the beginning. I mean, like for people who don't know about Detroit City FC, they're kind of like it's like a cult thing in the lower leagues, because they started an amateur team, like just a group of like people started this amateur team in the NPSL, and they've averaged somewhere in like the 6,000s for attendance, like being amateur.
And their home ground has like a very like lower league English feel.
Yeah.
It's in Hamtramck, in which is actually like an exclave, an enclave of Detroit. Like it's in Detroit city limits, but it's not Detroit.
Right.
Technically.
Yeah.
I went to school in Michigan, so this is the only reason why I know this. But
the story of the club is impressive. They get kind of this weird reputation because of the amount of shit they talk on the internet.
Yeah, they were like starting it. It's January, but yeah.
The game is in April. And it's going to be like 3 months of banter, which is like...
Well, Eighth Notch has been saying that they want this, so we have absolutely our matchup in the Northern Guard.
They asked for the smoke, like, and now they've got, and literally, there will be so much smoke at that game. They pyro-wise, like, NPSL is not too picky about operators of smoke, so they literally, like, there are times, like, they've done, like, TIFOs and stuff in Detroit, but there are times where, like, there's one in particular, like, for like, Pride and all that, they did, like, just a rainbow of smoke bombs.
Damn.
All through and so different sections, like, did different colors or whatever, but it was, like, smoke just pouring across the field. And, like, at kickoff, it is legit just, there's smoke, like, everywhere. Because it's just the whole section is burning smoke bombs or whatever. But yeah, atmosphere wise and supporter wise, like, pretty much, they have built a very, like, St. Pauli vibe to their support.
That's
like,
a good comparison.
Like, it's very kind of punk. It's very, like, grassroots. And so for as much shit as they talk, they back it up with, like, they show up for games and for a team that, it's not in a high profile league. It's not, there's no, like, are we getting MLS or anything like that? And they, throughout the, through the community, they raised $750,000 to renovate Hamtramck Stadium, like, to turn that into their actual ground, because it was just a unused, like, high school football stadium or whatever. So they, like, renovated it into what it is now, with literally just, like, community investment. So yeah, it's kind of a crazy club. Like, it, by all rights, like, it shouldn't exist in American soccer. So yeah, I think in terms of matchups for the Open Cup, I'm pleased with it because, one, I think playing teams in the USL setup is, like, Forward Madison was about as interesting as that can get, but you're still kind of just playing teams that are in USL. Yeah. So playing a team like Detroit that's, like, outside of the system, I think it's a cool matchup for Locomotive, and watching it on ESPN Plus, like, and being able to kind of tap into this, like, lower league thing, it'll be a cool experience, and hopefully Locomotive break the curse of last year and are able to get past it. Like, Locomotive will be the more talented side. It's just a matter of, like, coping with the like, the atmosphere and the occasion, as weird as that is. Like, almost like Liverpool's, like, reserves going to Shrewsbury and drawing, because, the stands are packed and they're hostile, and when you have people who aren't used to playing in those type of environments, then it can be tough to cope with when you because, like,
Colchester versus Spurs,
right? Like, and kid, especially when you play, like, the kids or whatever. So I think for Locomotive, the motivation will certainly be there to beat Detroit City and get to around where you're playing, like, an MLS team, or you're playing kind of, like, up the pyramid or whatever. But,
I'm excited. I think
it's a cool occasion.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be really, really awesome. And I've heard so much about Detroit City, and for us to get matched with them, I think is really cool. I think we got 2 really good draws. Yeah. So. Yeah, it'll be cool. I mean, it's away, and I would go, but I think it's on a weekday. I would absolutely fly to Detroit.
It's a Wednesday, and shout out to Dion, who I've, like, talked to on Twitter or whatever. He's, like, one of the NGS guys, and so I jokingly did the football Twitter thing that's cool now, which is come outside.
Come outside.
Yeah, so
just want to talk.
I saw the draw, and, like. At Dion, come outside. But he actually was like, if you want to make a midweek if you want to make a midweek trip to Detroit, then like you can stay over or whatever. So that's just kind of the cool like community vibe of it. I 100% will not be able to, like there's no way, but but it is just like it's one of those things where it connects a couple of my interests, but yeah, it's a very cool draw. But Locomotive, if Locomotive don't beat them, that's certainly like an upset. Like we're definitely favorites in terms of like, well, just in terms of resources, like
yeah, that's true.
Like our squad should be better. So
I just feel like in cup games, so much of the psychology like plays into it because you know it's a knockout. Yeah. It's an unfamiliar foe, and now we're gonna be in hostile territory. That for me, I'm like maybe City can do something against us. Yeah. But yeah, it'll be interesting.
I look forward to Omar just shit talking the fans. Like he somehow finds a way to get on like the bad side of every away crowd. So I'm excited for them to be screaming at him and him blowing them kisses or something like that. Whatever. But yeah, it's a cool draw. And definitely looking forward to that. So I guess that kind of answers our last topic without getting too much more into it. At Paul B915 on Twitter asked prediction on who the best new signing of the season will be. I know we've had a couple of thoughts, but who for you is like that guy?
I think I'm gonna have to go with Distel. Yeah. Just because I think he's got the most impressive resume. Sure. Of the signings that we've made. Wealth of experience. I'm partial to the midfielders. I'm partial to the French. Yeah. The French connection, if you will. Right. And he's already scored, so I think that he can be a very big player for us. But again, you can't look past Lomis either. I think really between those two.
The Dutch Zlatan. That's what I've decided. We joked at the beginning of the season that Zlatan was coming to El Paso, but I mean, maybe he has, Maybe
we've got the like regen.
Yeah, he's got like physicality. Obviously, he's a big guy and he kind of has that vibe. But the reason that I say Zlatan is because he's big, but all 6 of his goals last season in those first 7 games were with his feet. So like. He's not just like Andy Carroll.
Yeah, he's not like a header merchant.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that was kind of my worry is like, are we buying like a target man?
Yeah, and I think he still is a target man, but like with more like quality in his feet. Right. Because a player like an Andy Carroll is not going to get into a Mark Lowry side. I don't think. No. So.
And it was one of those things. Looking at Lomis's stats and style on Smarter Scout, who we like partnered with towards the end of last season. They have style ratings basically, like so they take their stats and compile them on a scale of 0 to 100. Basically how they are versus everybody else in a certain league. And so the thing that gave me the most kind of hope is the fact that he was a 98 out of 100 in receiving the ball in the box, which I feel like that's not something we had in our strikers last year. A guy who could, either turn in the box or because most of the goals that Jerome scored were first time, like he wasn't really receiving the ball. It was like a driven cross that he's just like hitting first time,
and he's just using the pace on the ball, and
just or flicking it or like outside of the boot or whatever. Like a lot of Lomis's goals, he's like taking balls down off the chest and turning and scoring, which to me is like. That's a type of technical thing that we really didn't have anyone who could do that. Gomez maybe like on a good day, but most of his goals he either scored like he scored facing the goal. Yeah. Like he received the ball facing the goal. Yeah. Lomis to me is like a guy who can take a cross down and then like pick his spot, rather than having to rely on like, oh, I'm going to hit it on the volley or whatever. So
or like wait for a rebound or something like that.
yeah. So that, and then his he does have aerial ability, but it's more so about like winning that first ball into the attacking area of the pitch and then being able to link up as well, and not just being, as we talked about, like a big center forward who can barely like play. He's just like big.
He's just like I remember that somebody called like Olivier Giroud. They're like, he's like a basketball backboard.
Yeah.
Like you just bounce things
it off him.
he's just like a lump up front, which is a bit unfair to him unless he freaking goes to Spurs. But anyway.
Well, yeah. Well, but yeah. So yeah, Lomas and Zola I think are exciting. I think Facobo is one of those guys where just based on his pedigree and the fact that he spent like 8 seasons at Sporting, like even though he was loaned out, they would have just sold him if he wasn't good enough. Mm-hmm. So like now is the time where like, okay, his contract's up and they weren't going to renew it. But I think like business wise, that could prove to be one of the signings of the season, just because I mean he's 25 years old, and he's clearly like a gifted player, just a matter of at what level. Mm-hmm. And speaking to he is a player that I think could use this season as a platform to, like, I wouldn't expect him to be here next year.
Yeah, no, I think he still has a lot of potential still. Maybe not in terms of like Europe, but MLS. Yeah, exactly. Because like you said, he spent a long time at one of the best academies in Europe. Yeah. So yeah, it could be one of those situations, kind of like Jerome, where it's like, come here and play to the best of your ability and kind of see what that gets you. Right. Which fair enough.
Yeah. And that is, but yeah, it's a good question. And I think it'll shake out pretty quickly, like early on in the season. I think we'll know, pretty early on who Mark trusts, mm-hmm. And who he favors. But I think too, the way that they've spoken about this squad is, I think the idea is to try to have, if they're carrying 21 or 22 players into the season, we had 24 last year, but probably 4 of them were not really like at the level to be able to compete like week in and week out. I mean, we had one loanee who made 0 appearances. Daniel Navarro was loaned out like almost immediately, after the Fresno game. Yep. I feel for Josh Castellanos, but he was like,
that's a player that it was really disappointing because he showed flashes. Yeah. Of talent. I mean, the ankle breaker against Rome Monarchs. I mean, yeah, poor guy.
It's the what could have been.
Yeah, nice guy too.
Yeah, absolutely. But now I do think, just speaking about like the structure of the roster and everything, I think it's a little different than last year because we really do feel like we have up and down the roster, like everybody is able to step in. There's no like fluff or filler on the roster of like, oh, we have 24 guys. Mm-hmm. It's, if it ends at 21 or 22, whatever the final number is, I think you'll look up and down that sheet and it's going to be, everybody's literally going to be fighting for a spot in the 18, like every single week. So it's a good situation to be in. Like,
absolutely. Not
really knowing who the standout is going to be, but knowing that they're all going to be pushing each other to be the standout.
Yes. Yeah, it's good that we've got like the potential for competition in every area of the pitch pretty much. So yeah, we're I don't know. It's obviously hope springs eternal in the preseason and everybody is
at least at this point, we're undefeated and Phoenix isn't. So
gotta take what we can get, right?
Never mind the opposition. But yeah, we obviously are looking forward to a good season, and we'll have plenty of more stuff. Be on the lookout as you're listening to this. If you haven't already, check out Mikka's piece about Seb Velasquez, the Seb Velasquez saga, as we spoke about. It is unlocked for public consumption now. And if you want to join those of you who are already there, if you want to join those who get access to the written content and all the extra stuff immediately, then you can over on our Patreon. If you just look for Seriously Loco on patreon.com, it is $2 a month. Will get you just access to everything right away. Nothing that's on there, or, well, some stuff will be patron only, but because of the nature of the website. But all the written content will eventually become public. But if you want to get it right away, then it's $2 a month, and you're just supporting the show and helping us make it bigger and better than before. We've been able to do more stuff now and be able to invest back into the show, like with our own website, which you can check out, seriouslyloco.com. The article will also be up there, and you can see a really great interview with Logan Ketterer from Christian Canales up there as well. And we'll have all kinds of written content up there all season. Hope you guys have enjoyed this episode, and if you have, you can find the podcast on all the major podcast platforms: Spotify, iTunes, or Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. So check it out there. And then if you don't already, you can find us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, Seriously Loco. So I guess as we head into the meat of the preseason, we'll keep an eye out for player TBA. But until player TBA is announced, stay loco.